Hey guys, I wanted to film another video. So today I watched the third installment of Science Uprising. This is something that's being put out with some kind of association with the Discovery Institute. For those of you who don't know, the Discovery Institute is a group of scientists and philosophers, mostly scientists, who are advocating for intelligent design as a scientific theory, as opposed to neo-Darwinism. And this video series has been quite amazing. It's kind of a very short documentary format videos that are easy to share, very well done, very well explained. And I think this third installment was incredible. There was a previous installment where they were talking about scientific evidence for free will, and I thought that was quite interesting. I definitely want to go back and rewatch that one. But this one was more in my field. So this third installment was about digital code inside of DNA and inside of living things. Um, they quoted Bill Gates talking about how DNA is more sophisticated than any software any human being has ever developed. And that's probably the understatement of the century, because the more we learn about DNA, the more we learn how complex it is. Um, the idea that most of our DNA is junk is pretty much going out the door. I don't think that I don't think in the next few years junk DNA is going to be anywhere near as popular as it has been. Um, at least, when I was in school, they told us, okay, the vast majority of the human genome is junk. They said it was around like 98%, something like that. Um, we're learning more and more that that's just not true. So, yeah, this video wasn't really so much about junk DNA, but it was about the digital code inside of living things and how sophisticated DNA is, how sophisticated the software inside of every cell and every living creature on Earth is. Um, and it talked about the idea that, well, maybe this could have been built just by mutation and natural selection, which is, basically the argument of neo-Darwinism. Um, there are actually evolutionary biologists who disagree with this. More and more, you're seeing you're seeing what's called post-neo-Darwinism. You're seeing this movement from a group called Third Way, and which is a group of evolutionary biologists who are saying, you know what, neo-Darwinism is wrong. It can't produce the sophisticated complexity that we see in living things, and there have to be other mechanisms involved in this. Now they will say, well, they will of course say, well, we disagree with intelligent design though, because you're not allowed to consider the possibility that there was a programmer who wrote the program, because to say that a programmer wrote the program or that there was an engineer behind the engineering, well, that's religious. So this particular video from the this particular video um, really focused on the digital code inside of DNA, focused on software, talked about the idea that you could go from having Pong to a sophisticated video game just um, by basically mutation and selection within a program. It doesn't hold up. So it's not, and beyond that, I kind of wanted to add to it. It's not, as somebody who's skeptical of the claims of neo-Darwinism, like, it's not my job to prove that mutation and natural selection can't do something. It's the job of proponents to show that it can, and to show that empirically. And what we've seen in all of our experiments, what we've seen in living things, is that yes, mutation happens, yes, selection happens. Sometimes mutations will give a survival advantage. For example, there are people in the world who can um, still drink milk even past the age of being a toddler, and the reason is because of a mutation that basically takes a regulatory switch and makes it where it's stuck in the on position, instead of being able to turn on and off at the appropriate time in someone's life. Now, this is clearly an advantage. It's helped people quite a bit. I think the survival advantage was 5% historically, because being able to drink milk was, as an adult, was a big deal um, throughout most of history. But that doesn't show where new software comes from. It doesn't show where new sophistication comes from. All you're showing is how glitches in the existing programming can sometimes be beneficial. It doesn't show how new programming can come about. It doesn't show how you can get new software engineering without a software engineer. It doesn't show how you can create new biochemical pathways. It doesn't show where new genetic information comes from. Now, there's a lot of counter arguments they try to make. There's a lot of speculation. They'll say, well, maybe you have a duplication event, so where you might get two copies of a gene instead of one, for example, and then one of the copies is free to mutate and free to change. And we see duplication events, we see mutation following that, but we never see again, this has never been shown to create new programming and new sophistication. Um, and I really find it very interesting how the burden of proof here is so often reversed, where they say, okay, those of you who are skeptical of Darwinism, prove it wrong. Prove that mutation and natural selection can't create brand new software. And while there's a very strong case that that can't happen, to demand absolute proof, goes beyond what science is capable of, and they're pushing it basically into the realm of religion. And so it becomes this. It's an argument from ignorance, because because you can't disprove the idea that natural selection and mutation can create new sophistication. That means that it can. And that's not good science, guys. Like, that is not how things are normally done in a laboratory. Um, if I go into a laboratory and I want to say, okay, does ivory soap sink or does it float? Um, I take a bucket of water, take the ivory soap, drop it in, see, did it sink or did it float? So there's an empirical objectivism there. There's not this, well, I feel this or I think that. It's what what can you see based on the data? And in order for neo-Darwinists to have their case, they really need to show real cases where mutation and natural selection has created new programming. Now, one big one they'll use is they'll try to say that nyelinase is an example of this. However, their case really doesn't hold up, and that's something I really want to make a video for in the future. I wanted to make one a long time ago about it, but I just haven't had the time. So we'll see when that happens, or if that happens. But anyway, so that's basically my commentary on it. I think it was great. It was really well done. It was really sophisticated, and I'm really glad that they didn't try to bend over backwards and disprove all of the speculation and all of the so-called counter arguments that might pop into the head of a skeptic who just doesn't want to know the truth anyway and who just wants to make excuses. Because at the end of the day, this really should be a scientific question. If you're going to claim that mutation and natural selection are capable of creating everything we see, all of the sophistication we see in all of the biological life on Earth, then you have to be able to show at least that it can create a little bit of sophistication and create a little bit of new genetic information, or create some new biochemical pathway, some new software. And evolutionists just have not done that. Mutation, natural selection exist, beneficial mutation exists, um, even though it's very rare. But this idea that mutation and natural selection can build a genome as sophisticated as a human being, or as sophisticated as a plant, or even as an amoeba or a bacterium, the idea that something like that that level of software could have been built by mutation and natural selection, it's not supported by the data. It's not been shown by the data. Um, and if Darwinists want to make that claim and believe that, they're free to believe that. Um, but they've run around claiming that this view has been proven, and to not believe it is the same as believing that the Earth is flat or saying that gravity doesn't exist. Um, well, it's been demonstrated that the Earth is round. It's been demonstrated that gravity exists. exists. I don't know of anybody who denies the existence of gravity. But if somebody wants to put if somebody wants to put neo-Darwinism on the same level as that, they're free to make that claim. But until they can show the scientific demonstration that mutation and natural selection can create new software, then their claim is just smoke. Like there's nothing there. There's no substance to it. Um, so anyway, go check out this video. It's much shorter than my review video. And let me know what you think about both my video and their video in the comments section. Thank you for taking the time to watch this and hear my thoughts. This is Greg.